$16.5 million ticket. And the buyer's big question is about hot dogs. He's standing at a Des Moines convenience store counter with a hood up, and over the little scratchy counter mic he asks,
"Wait, your hot dogs?" "Yes, sir."
"You got hot dogs?" Like he's just another guy grabbing lunch. Except this isn't lunch. This is the biggest hot lotto jackpot in years. And that tiny throwaway question is what helps pull the whole thread, because the person behind that hood isn't some lucky regular. It's Eddie Tipton, the Information Security Director at the Multi-State Lottery Association in Urbandale, Iowa, which is a fancy way of saying he's one of the people trusted to protect the lottery's randomness. Later, he flat out admits it in court. "I wrote software that included code that allowed me to understand winning numbers prior to a drawing. If you're trying to build the perfect lottery scam, that job title is basically cheating." MUSL ran computerized draw games, including Hot Lotto, in this lockdown world where a handful of people go in and out of secured rooms. Procedures are everything, and the whole thing depends on trust. And on the other end, when the prizes get huge, winners can show up with lawyers, trusts, and paperwork designed to keep names out of the headlines. Math and secrecy on one side, anonymity on the other, and a small group in the middle holding it all together. Eddie is right in the middle. It starts quietly. Around 2005, he figures out how to bend the system without looking like he's bending it. He isn't sitting there picking the winning numbers like a cartoon villain. The trick is more subtle. On very specific dates, the supposed randomness stops being a wide-open universe and becomes a much smaller, more predictable pool. So if you're one of the few people who knows when those windows happen, you don't need magic. You just need a ticket. And the first proof of life shows up in Colorado. A jackpot for $568,990 gets hit, and later it's linked back to the scheme and to Eddie's brother, Tommy Tipton. Tommy isn't some random cousin who got lucky. He's Eddie's brother, and he knows how to present himself like he belongs anywhere. A former Texas Justice of the Peace doesn't exactly scream lottery ring, which is the point. Once they see it works, it doesn't turn into one giant smash and grab. It turns into a routine, a drip. Because the smartest part of an insider scam is not being the face of it. Eddie stays at work, stays quiet, stays trusted, and the tickets get bought and claimed by other people in other places with enough distance that it looks like coincidence. One state win doesn't talk to another state win. And even if someone notices something odd, odd is not the same as criminal. Then 2007 rolls around and the Polish improves. In Wisconsin, a $2 million megabucks jackpot gets won. And the trail later points toward Robert Rhodes, a Texas businessman who acts like a helper, a facilitator, the guy who can make things happen without asking too many questions. Business fronts start showing up. The kind of structure that makes money look managed instead of suspicious. And this is where the scam is actually kind of boring, which is why it works. It's not Eddie sprinting into a vault. It's Eddie shrinking the odds on certain days, then letting other people play in the narrowed lane, and then keeping his own name out of the claim process. For years, it's spread out. Colorado, Wisconsin, and then other wins investigators later tie into the same pattern in places like Kansas and Oklahoma. One reported Oklahoma hot lotto jackpot connected to the conspiracy is around $1.2 million. Not pocket change, but not so huge that it forces a national spotlight every time. The numbers add up, though. Across jurisdictions, it's roughly $24 million that this thing touches in one way or another. And when you're living inside a system like that, you start to feel like the rules are just suggestions for other people. Then greed gets an address. December 2010. Hot Lotto is sitting at $16.5 million in Iowa. And Eddie does the one thing he'd been smart enough not to do for years. He buys the ticket himself in Des Moines, days before the December 29th drawing. This is the moment with the hood. This is the counter mic. This is the hot dogs. And he doesn't cash it right away. The ticket sits unclaimed for nearly a year, just quietly existing out there like a time bomb. Which is a weird move if you're a normal winner, but it makes perfect sense if your whole plan depends on not being seen. If you wait, you hope the cameras get overwritten, the attention moves on, and nobody's looking when the money finally gets scooped up. Except the claim doesn't come from some ordinary guy in a hoodie. Right near the deadline in December 2011, a New York attorney named Crawford Shaw walks into the Iowa lottery with the winning ticket. He says he's there on behalf of a Belize-based trust, Hexam Investments Trust. It's the kind of arrangement that's supposed to make everyone stop asking who the real winner is. Only the Iowa lottery does the opposite. They ask anyway. They tell him, basically, you can't take $16.5 million out of here without naming the actual person who won it. Shaw refuses. He won't identify the beneficiary, so the lottery refuses to pay, and eventually, the claim gets withdrawn. Be honest, if a mystery trust shows up on day 364 for $16.5 million and refuses to name who's actually holding the ticket, are you paying it? This standoff is what saves the whole case, because if Iowa cuts that check, the money vanishes into a legal fog and there's no reason to keep digging. Instead, the Iowa lottery flags it as suspicious and starts pushing back hard publicly. And now the scam has a problem it can't solve with spreadsheets. In October 2014, the Iowa lottery releases the convenience store surveillance video of the person buying the ticket. It's grainy, it's not a face reveal, and on paper it should be useless. A hooded guy at a counter could be anyone. But it isn't just video, there's audio. That counter mic picks up the hooded buyer talking, and there it is again. Floating through a convenience store speaker like the dumbest clue in history. You got hot dogs? People who work with Eddie see it, they hear it, and co-workers start telling investigators from the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation the same thing. The build looks like him, and the voice sounds like him. Not maybe. More like that uncomfortable certainty you get when you recognize someone in a place they absolutely should not be. So investigators start stacking the boring stuff on top of the human stuff, travel patterns, phone and location records, who was where and when. Then they widen the lens outward, because once you have one suspicious jackpot tied to an insider, the next question is obvious. Is this the only one? They start looking at other odd wins across states that used MUSL games, and they see shapes that rhyme. Familiar intermediaries. Entities that don't feel like regular winners. Dates that line up with the kind of selective windows Eddie could have created. And then the technical side catches up, with software forensics that support the same basic conclusion. The randomness wasn't always random. The wild part is that the most cinematic piece of this isn't code. It's lottery staff watching a clip and saying out loud, "That's Eddie," because of a throwaway line about hot dogs. In January 2015, Eddie Tipton gets arrested in Iowa, charged over the attempted redemption of that $16.5 million prize and computer tampering. The quiet guardian of the draw room is suddenly the guy everyone is talking about, and the illusion that this was all just luck collapses fast. A jury convicts him in July 2015 on charges tied to the Iowa hot lotto attempt, and the case keeps expanding while other pieces of the ring start folding. His brother Tommy admits his role. Robert Rhodes does too. The circle that was supposed to keep Eddie off the paperwork turns into a map. By June 29, 2017, Eddie takes a global plea deal covering multiple states, including Iowa, Wisconsin, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Colorado. And he admits he manipulated the lottery RNG software to predict outcomes on select dates. In August 2017, he's sentenced to up to 25 years in prison, and restitution is set at roughly $2.2 million, with the usual fine print that numbers like that can vary depending on what gets recovered and when. Iowa never pays the $16.5 million because the claim never clears the identity requirement. He ends up serving about 5 years before getting paroled in 2020. Terry Rich, the Iowa Lottery CEO at the time, sums up the whole thing with one line that lands like a brick. If this ticket had been paid, we may never have known what happened. And sure enough, Hot Lotto eventually ends, reforms roll in, and the guy hired to protect randomness becomes the reason everyone has to rebuild it, all because somebody needed a hood, a lawyer, a Belize trust, and apparently a quick check on the hot dog situation. Enjoyed this story? Leave a like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next one. Now you know.